Good to see you again. The time is 18 minutes before 8 o'clock on this Wednesday morning.
And we're going through the papers this morning with journalist Candice Holdsworth and political consultant Emma Burnell. Really good to see you both this morning. And Candice, let's start with you, shall we? The front page of The Guardian. The UN is calling for a ban on phones in schools.
Well, I don't know what it's got to do with the UN, first of all, but do you know what? I think this is the biggest piece of common sense ever. If I was a school teacher, I would have a basket at the front of the class, a laundry basket, and would say, "Oh, in the basket, throw your phone there." I wouldn't allow my pupils to have a phone in the class.
No, and many schools say they do that. They have a policy of no phones. You have to hand your phone in at the end of the day. You can get it back at the end of the day if you need to message your parents to get picked up or whatever.
Or after class, just, you know, every 40 minutes or whatever.
Yes, no, it needs to be regulated because there's obviously the problem of distraction, which is a huge one, but also cyberbullying. That's also a problem. But apparently kids at break, they can just sit absorbed in their phones and they're not socialising with each other. And some teachers really don't like that. They want them to have that social time together at lunch or break time or whatever. I think this is such a new technology and we're not quite sure the effect it's having on young children and teenagers and as they're developing. So I think we should be cautious about how much we expose them to it. And I have read that all the people who create this technology in places like Silicon Valley, they regulate their children's screen time because they know how addictive it can be.
See, well, I mean, I would hate that, Emma. You know, I mean, I don't know what you did in your break time, but the first thing we did was somebody would get a ball, a tennis ball, a football, or whatever ball, and there would be a ball involved in it. Or there'd be a bit of bullying going on, you know, something you had to do, sort somebody out.
Well, it's interesting. Candice and I were talking about this earlier. When you're in primary school, you play games and you play with toys. And then you go up to secondary school and you hang out and you don't play games anymore because that's for the younger children. But I do think that social time, Candice is absolutely right. You know, it's not just don't have them in the classroom for all the very good reasons that you've set out, but also if we can just get kids to talk to each other in the break, those socialisation skills are so important. You know, I've got friends that I made when I was 7, 8 years old. I've got friends from every part of my schooling, and I worry that if kids are just burying their heads in their phones rather than talking to each other, they won't create those bonds, and those bonds are necessary for our lives.
It's quite sad that it takes this to go to the United Nations, and not all schools see this as an absolute and say, this shouldn't be happening, because if you're on your phone, you're not listening to the teacher or doing all these things that we talked about. Right. Emma, exercise. Right. I did this yesterday. I did a plank yesterday, right? So a plank is good for me, apparently.
A plank is apparently still exercise. We've been so obsessed for so long with aerobic exercise, with raising your heartbeat. But actually, in terms of blood pressure, apparently that kind of high-intensity still exercise that a plank demonstrates. For those who don't know, a plank is when you are flat on your hands and your tiptoes. And it's very, very hard to stay that way. It works very hard on your core. It's a huge part of Pilates or yoga. And it raises my blood pressure even thinking about it.
No, I agree, and I'm looking here and I'm saying, you're saying being still. Squats is an awful thing to do, especially if you're heavy.
Well, I really struggle with squats. As you know, I've been much heavier than I am now, not that I'm a skinny mini. And as a result, my knees are quite damaged. So I find any exercise where the bending at the knees is part of it really very difficult. Now, I find some easier than others, but squats are... it's not just out of my comfort zone, it's out of my possibility zone a lot of the time. But it would have been great if I had not been in the state I was in and had done these things younger. So maybe it's a great idea for people to start inculcating different types of exercise. So everyone should find the exercise that works for them, because if you try to do an exercise you don't like, no one does that. No one does that. No. So for me, I love to walk. I walk 5 miles a day at least. Absolutely love it. Build it into my lifestyle. Make sure that it's a possibility for me. And that's how I make sure that I'm getting that exercise in. I also do a bit of yoga. I tried to do running. oh my God, I've never hated anything so much in my life. And it just didn't work. So it really is about making sure that we're doing good exercise that works for us.
And this is, if you've got high blood pressure, this is what we're saying here. This is the advice now. You've got to crank up the plank, basically. Pigs. Candice.
Yes.
So this is a rescue pig.
Yes, it's a rescue pig. It's a story in the Star. And there's a pig who was rescued from slaughter, and he was taken on board by a woman who runs a sanctuary for pigs. Her name's Joanne Lefso. And it turns out he has a talent for painting.
So the pig gets a paintbrush in its mouth.
Yes.
And then goes to a piece of paper or canvas.
Yes, and apparently they've sold for a lot of money, about £20,000 a piece, and he's raised about £1 million for her sanctuary.
Get out of it.
I need one of these pigs.
People love it. They love these pig portraits.
How did they
Are these people
out?
just stupid? Do they know that they're buying a pig's ear, or do they, what do they think they're getting here?
It must be animal lovers, and people especially who love rescuing animals from slaughter. It's got to be a part of it.
Then the pig could have intelligence.
But that's the thing.
You think so? The pig knows what it's doing?
Well, a lot of people, especially people who rescue pigs from slaughter and are very opposed to eating pork, say that pigs are incredibly intelligent animals. They're like dogs. And so we shouldn't really be eating them.
So
I think it's that sort of cohort.
He could just be a creative genius. Picasso.
I am interested to know how they found out that this pig had this talent.
Yeah.
Whose idea was it to suddenly hand this pig a paintbrush
and some paint?
Have at it.
Yeah.
It's a smiley pig as well. Any pictures of it, it's got a big smile on its face. It looks really happy doing what it's doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, bringing home the bacon, taken on a whole new meaning, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
That one. Emma, let's have a look at the Gulf Stream, shall we? Apparently it could collapse.
Yeah, the Gulf Stream... 2025 is the early end of the estimate, so it's somewhere between 2025 and 2095, but so the median is about 2050. But if the Gulf Stream collapses, what we're seeing now in terms of environmental disasters with wildfires, droughts, extreme weather conditions will be as to nothing. It will have a very, very serious deleterious effect. The Gulf Stream regulates the climate of our oceans, and as such, and that makes the difference. All the tides are run through that. We will see vastly increased water levels on the east coast of America. We will see huge droughts. It basically helps the rainfalls that feed huge parts of Africa and Asia. So if the Gulf Stream collapses, we are in serious trouble.
Are we responsible for the Gulf Stream collapsing? Do we know why it's collapsing?
It's global warming. It's because the polar ice caps and the Norwegian ice caps are melting at a much faster rate, and the fresh water from that coming into the Gulf Stream is changing the temperature of it, which is what's slowing everything down.
OK, another cheery environment, climate story. Twitter. So has Twitter changed already, the logo of it, or is this a proposal?
No, he's done it. He just did it overnight. Everyone woke up and suddenly the Twitter logo was X. But now everyone's saying, well, what are we going to call tweets?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like not very well thought through.
Yeah, there's a logo with an X in the corner, but it still says tweet when you want to press your button to send anything.
It's completely incoherent.
So true,
It's just
I don't know
so
what
badly
you're
thought
talking
through.
about. I'm putting it on here and it all says Twitter. I don't see any...
Have you got...
When you log in, it just shows a quick X just before.
Look on my Twitter page.
Yeah.
That's gone to a big grey X in the corner now. But you're right. I mean,
No,
if
I
you actually
haven't
want to
got
tweet,
that.
it says tweet.
Yeah.
It's so badly
It's not
planned
quite
out.
there, is it?
It just feels like, yet again, it's not something that he's gone... I have a strategic plan for this organisation that's going to bring us into profitability and making this a great user experience. It's just I've had an idea, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to listen to anybody, I'm just going to do it tonight. And it just seems...
But he is a genius.
Well, so they tell me, but I'm not seeing a great amount of evidence of that right now.
I can't see an X anywhere.
Yeah, you've still got Twitter. You've got... I don't know how
I think
you've
the app,
managed to...
certainly the app is still a burden. There's been no update on the app.
Maybe you have to log out to log in again.
Yeah, well, Eamon's still on Twitter, so...
If you're using the app, my app is still a bird, but it's on the desktop side at the moment. So again, it's very poorly rolled out.
That. But it's interesting, this new thing that's come out called Threads,
Yeah.
which was to rival Twitter. I'm not really convinced about that either.
Yeah,
Well, it
apparently
took off, didn't it, for about a day?
Yeah.
It's lost momentum since then. And they're saying it's because I don't know, Twitter sort of has a lot more spice going on, whereas Threads doesn't, and it's just difficult to, like, bring people together and get them wanting to look at it.
You mean Threads is nice?
Yes,
Yes.
and it's meant to be. They want to avoid that sort of political controversy, but actually that's what makes Twitter. That's why everyone sort of looks at it.
Unless you're on the receiving end of it.
Well,
Yeah,
that's true,
absolutely.
actually. Unless you're the one being mobbed, that's true.
Yeah, if you're the story of the day on Twitter,
you're
Never be the main character.
Yes, exactly.
Ladies, we're talking about regional delicacies a little bit later on in the programme, and Emma, you described the most amazing regional delicacy earlier.
So I used to spend quite a lot of time in a very specific part of the northeast, Teesside, and very, very local to Teesside, so it's not across the northeast. There is a delicacy you can get in every chip shop called a parmo.
Parmo.
Or, as I refer to it, a heart attack in a box, but worth it. It's a large piece of breaded, deep-fried chicken, about the size of a pizza. It's served in a pizza box, covered in bechamel sauce, and you can get it with mushrooms or chilies on top, and then served with chips. And it's to die for.
Yeah.
But you will die.
That sounds amazing.
But that's when you were bad, was it?
That was, yeah, Parmos. I have not had a Parmo since I've been losing the weight, and these things are not unconnected, I'm sure.
We'll have to change that and bring me with you.
Absolutely. We'll take a trip to the northeast.
Yeah, you two should go on a road trip.
Emma, Candice, thank you both very much indeed. The guys are going to be back in 40 minutes' time.